In the game of rugby union, there are 15 players on each team, comprising 8 forwards and 7 backs. In addition, there may be up to 8 replacement players on the bench. Jersey numbers chapters 16 to 23 differentiate them. Players are not restricted to any single position on the field, although they generally specialize in just one or two that suit their skills and body types. Players that specialize in over 3 positions are called utility players. The scrum, however, must consist of 8 players: the front row, the second row, and a back row. The players outside the scrum are called the backs, Scrum-Half, Fly-Half, 2 centers, 2 wings, and a fullback. Early names, such as three-quarters and outside halves, are still used by many in the Northern Hemisphere, while in the Southern Hemisphere the fly-half and inside center are colloquially called first 5/8 and second 5/8 respectively, while the scrum-half is known as the half-back. The backs play behind the forwards and are usually more lightly built and faster. Successful backs are skillful at passing and kicking. Fullbacks need to be good defenders and kickers, and have the ability to catch a kick ball. The wingers are usually among the fastest players in a team and score many of the tries. The center's key attacking roles are to try and break through the defensive line and link successfully with wingers. The fly-half can be a good kicker and generally directs the back line. The scrum-half retrieves the ball from the forwards and needs a quick and accurate pass to get the ball to the backs. Forwards compete for the ball in scrums and lineouts and are generally bigger and stronger than the backs. Props push in the scrums, while the hooker tries to hook the ball. Locks are tall and jump for the ball at the lineout after the hooker has thrown it in. The flankers and number 8 should be the first forwards to tackle and play an important role in securing possession of the ball for the team. Overview. There are a maximum of 15 players from each team on a rugby field at one time. The player's position at the start of the game is indicated by the number on the back of the shirts, 1 to 15. The positions are divided into 2 main categories, forwards and backs. In international matches, there are 8 substitutes that can replace an on-field team member. The substitutes, numbered 16 to 23, can either take up the position of the player they replace, or the on-field players can be shuffled to make room for this player in another position. Typically, the replacement players will have a number that corresponds with their intended replacement position, with the numbers from 16 to 20 being forwards, and 21 to 23 being backs. There are no personal squad numbers, and a versatile player's position and number may change from one game to the next. Players can also change positions with players on the field during the match, and, as long as the laws are followed, any player can change positions with another player during the match. Common examples of the fly-half playing the fullback's position in defense, or a prop taking the hooker's position at line-outs. Different positions on the field suit certain skill sets and body types, generally leading to players specializing in a limited number of positions. Each position has certain roles to play on the field, although most have been established through convention rather than law. During general play, as long as they are not offside, the players may be positioned anywhere on the field. It is during the set pieces, scrum and line out, when the positions are in force. At line-outs there must be at least 2 players from each team lined up 5 meters from where the ball crossed the sideline. They form 2 straight lines next to each other, and a player from the team awarded the line-out throws the ball between them. A player from each team stands 2 meters from the line-out, and the opposing team must also have someone standing 2 meters from the player throwing the ball in. The remainder of the team not participating in the line out must be positioned at least 10 meters back from the line out. While anyone on the field can be part of a line out, it is generally composed of forwards. The usual situation involves the hooker throwing the ball in, aiming for the locks that are lifted into the air by the props. The scrum halves are usually positioned near the line out, ready to receive the ball once the forwards have gained possession. Each team must have 8 players in the scrum, unless for some reason they cannot field 15 players. Specialized front row players must be part of the scrum for safety reasons under the law. If a specialized player is not available, the scrum must have no weight, which means no player is allowed to push forward once the scrum commences. In cases where a front row player is off the field due to a yellow card or a red card, a temporary substitution of another player is mandatory to ensure specialist front row players participate in the scrum. If a team cannot field 8 in the scrum, generally it drops the flankers of the number 8, but the props, hooker and locks must be maintained. The props bind on either side of the hooker to form the front row of the scrum. The 2 locks bind together and push on the props and the hooker. The flankers bind to the side of the scrum and the number 8 pushes on the locks or a lock and a flanker. Once each team has formed its half of the scrum, the 2 front rows are brought together under the command of the referee. The scrum half puts the ball into the middle of the scrum and then retrieves it from under the number 8's feet if it is won. The remainder of the team must be positioned at least 5 meters back from the scrum. History. During early rugby union games there were only really 2 positions. Most players were in the forwards, who formed part of the scrimmage, and a few defensive 10s. Eventually, the attacking possibilities of playing close behind the scrimmage were recognized. The players who stationed themselves between the forwards and 10s became known as half-10s. Later, it was observed that the players outside scrimmage were not limited to a defensive role, so the 10s and half-10s were renamed backs and halfbacks. As the game became more sophisticated, the backs positioned at different depths behind the forwards. They were further differentiated into halfbacks, three-quarterbacks, and full-back. Specialized roles for the scrum also evolved, with wing forward being employed to protect the half-back. The first international between England and Scotland was played in 1871 and consisted of 20 players on each side, 13 forwards, 3 halfbacks, 1 three-quarter and 3 full-backs. The player numbers were reduced to 15 in 1877. Numbers were added to the backs of players' jerseys in the 1920s, initially as a way for coaches and selectors to rate individual players. Names of positions. The various positions have changed names over time, and many are known by different names in different countries. Players in the flanky positions were originally known as wing forwards, while in the backs, centre three-quarter and wing three-quarter were used to describe the outside centre and wing respectively. The International Rugby Board standard names tend to reflect Northern Hemisphere usage, although fly half is still often known as outside half or stand off in Britain, and out elf in Ireland. In New Zealand, the scrum half is still referred to as the halfback. The fly half is referred to as the first 5/8. The inside centre is called the second 5/8, and the outside centre is simply known as centre. In America and Canada, the number 8 is known as 8-man. Collective terms are also used to describe similar positions, with the props and hookers combining to form the front row, the locks the second row, and the flankers and number 8 the loose forwards, or the loosies. The front row and second row combined are collectively termed the tight 5. In the backs, halfbacks can be used to describe the scrum half and fly half. Inside backs to describe the scrum half, fly half, and inside center, midfield for the fly half and both centers, and outside backs for the outside center, wings and full-back. The two props are distinguished by being either a tight head or loose head. The blindside flanker binds to the scrum on the side closest to the sideline, while the open side flanker binds on the side with the most space between the scrum and the sideline. Wingers usually stick to one side of the field and are termed left wing or right wing. Backs, fullbacks usually position themselves several meters behind the back line. They field any deep opposition kicks and are often the last line of defense should an opponent break through the back line. On attack, they can enter the back line, usually near the centers or wings, with the aim of providing an extra person and overlapping the defending players. Three of the most important attributes of a good fullback are good catching ability under a high kick, the ability to punt the ball a long distance with accuracy, and the speed and skill to join in backline attacking moves, especially counter-attacks. The fullback is the player most likely to field the high ball or up and unders kicked by the opposition. Good hands are needed to ensure the ball is caught cleanly to deny the opposition the chance to regain possession, as the fullback will inevitably catch the ball deep in their own territory with little support from their own players. They should either kick the ball downfield or run forward to link up with the backs to start a counter-attack. If the fullback kicks the ball at the opposition, have the throw-in, whereas if they start a counter-attack, they have a number of options to provide effective cover behind the defensive line. Good fullbacks are careful not to get caught out of position and must anticipate the opposition's play. The position behind the back line allows them to see any holes in the defensive line, and they either communicate with the backs to close the gaps, up or cover the gaps themselves. The fullback has the most potential for attacking the opposition, especially from a misdirected kick. If a kick is fielded and there is enough space and support, the fullback may decide to counter-attack by running the ball back towards the opposition. Due to the kicking skills in some teams, the fullback is also responsible for taking the goal kicks. For much of the history of the sport, the fullback position was almost totally defensive. Originally, the ball could be kicked directly into touch from any spot on the field, with a line out then following at the spot where the ball went into touch. This effectively placed a premium on fullbacks' skills in kicking from hand. The first test tries by fullbacks in international matches came relatively early, in 1878 and 1880, but it was not until 1934 that a fullback scored a try in the competition now known as the Six Nations Championship. Only 3 tries had been scored by fullbacks in the championship prior to 1969. According to rugby historian John Griffiths, the worldwide adoption of the current law restricting direct kicking into touch in September 1968 revolutionized fullback play. J.P.R. Williams of Wales was the first fullback to irregularly score tries after the law changed, scoring 6 times in 5 Nations matches in the 1970s. Notable fullbacks include Serge Blanco, who scored 38 tries in 93 tests for France and was known for his counter-attacking ability. In 1997, Serge Blanco was among the inaugural set of rugby players inducted into the International Rugby Hall of Fame, and in 2011 he was also inducted into the IRB Hall of Fame. 4 fullbacks who played for the British and Irish Lions are in the International Rugby Hall of Fame: Gavin Hastings and Andy Irvine from Scotland, Tom Kiernan from Ireland, and the aforementioned Williams. Hastings and Irvine were accurate goal kickers, and Kiernan is credited with being the first attacking fullback in Irish rugby. Williams was chosen as the greatest Lions fullback at the inaugural Lions Legends Dinner at Lord's in 2008 and is praised for his safety under the high ball tackling and calm decision-making. The other fullbacks in the International Rugby Hall of Fame are Don Clark and George Napier from New Zealand. Clark, nicknamed the Boot, was an accurate goal kicker, and Napier was noted for his tackling and kicking ability. Three-quarters wing. The wings are generally positioned on the outside of the back line, with the number 11 on the left and the number 14 on the right. The primary function is to finish off moves and score tries. Wingers are usually the fastest players in the team and are either elusive runners or, more recently, big, strong and able to break tackles. The skills needed for the left wing and right wing are similar, although left-footed players are usually played on the left wing as they can step and kick better off the left foot. The winger on the blind side often comes off the wing to provide an extra man in the midfield, in the same vein as a full-back. One or both wingers will usually drop back on opposition kicks to give the full-back extra options for counter-attacking. Notable wings: David Campese, a member of both the International and IRB Halls of Fame, played 101 times for Australia and held the world record for most tries in Test matches. He was famous for his goose step and reverse pass. Welsh international Gerald Davies was influential in helping the British Lions become the only Lions touring party to win a Test series in New Zealand. Ewan Evans played 72 games for Wales and scored 33 tries, at that time a record for Wales. In 1994, International Rugby Hall of Famer John Kirwan retired as the most capped player and highest try scorer in All Black history. Jonah Lomu entered the International Hall in 2007 and the IRB Hall of Fame in 2011, debuted as the youngest ever All Black. Tony O'Reilly played wing for Ireland between 1955 and 1970 and scored a record 38 tries on 2 Lions tours. André Boniface is a French international that is a member of both the International Rugby Hall of Fame and the IRB Hall of Fame. Also in the IRB Hall of Fame is Bill Mclaggen, a 19th-century player for Scotland and the Lions, who played at three-quarters, which eventually evolved into the modern position of wing. Another 2011 inductee in the IRB Hall is Bryan Lemur of Samoa, who played most of his career on the wing but ended it as a centre. He participated in 5 World Cups for Manu Samoa and became known as the chiropractor for his ferocious tackling. In 2012, Demi Sakata, a Japan star who was considered one of the world's top players of the 1960s, became his country's first inductee into the IRB Hall. Centre: there are 2 centres in a game of rugby, inside centre and outside centre. The inside centre usually stands close to the fly half or at first receiver on the other side of the scrum or breakdown. Like the fly half, they generally possess a good kicking game and are good at reading the play and directing the attack. The outside centre is positioned outside the inside centre and is generally the faster of the two. The centre's main role is to provide space for the players outside them. They need to run good lines, be able to sidestep and swerve, have good passing skills. When the ball is moved along the opposition backline, the centres are the first players to make the tackle. They need to be aggressive tacklers to knock their opponent down and seize the ball and be good at organizing the defensive lines. Outside centers generally have more room to move than inside centers. Centers also provide support at the breakdowns and can run as decoys to confuse the defense. Danny Gerber played center for South Africa during the apartheid era, and even though he was only able to play 24 tests over 12 years, he scored 19 tries. Mike Gibson played for Ireland and the Lions. His record of 69 caps for Ireland lasted for 26 years. Tim Horan won 2 World Cups for Australia, being named the player of the tournament in 1999. As a player, Ian Mclaggen won 32 caps for Scotland and went on 2 Lions tours, while as a coach he led the Lions a record 4 times. Welsh centre Gwyn Nichols played from 1896 to 1906 and was known as the Prince of Three Quarters. Other centres in the International Rugby Hall of Fame are Joe Marceau and Philippe Sella from France, known for the flamboyant attacking play. Gibson and Sella are also in the IRB Hall of Fame. 7 centres are in the IRB Hall but not the International Hall. Frank Hancock, a 19th-century Welsh player whose skills led to the creation of the modern two-centre formation. Guy Boniface, French international and younger brother of Andre brothers Donald and Ian Campbell of Chile. Zimbabwe international Richard Cimber and Mclaggen, Williams and Jack Matthews, who formed a legendary centre partnership for Cardiff and Wales in the era immediately following World War II. Half-backs first 5 fly half. A fly half is crucial to a team's game plan. They possess leadership and order the back line. They are usually the first to receive the ball from the scrum-half following a breakdown. Line out of scrum and need to be decisive with what actions to take and be effective at communicating with the outside backs. Good fly halves are calm, clear thinking and have the vision to direct effective attacking plays. Fly halves need good passing and kicking skills. Often the fly half is the best kicker in the team and needs to be able to execute attacking kicks such as up and unders, grubbers and chip kicks, as well as being able to kick for territory. Many fly halves are also the team's goal kickers. Fly halves in the International Rugby Hall of Fame include Johnny Wilkinson, as well as Welshman Phil Bennett, the latter of whom unleashed 2 great sidesteps to set up what some have described as the greatest try of all time. South African Nace Botha scored 312 points despite playing most of his career when the Springboks were boycotted. Australia's Mark Ella used his vision, passing skills and game management to orchestrate a new flat-back attacking style. Grant Fox was one of the most respected goal kickers who scored more than 1,000 points in all matches for New Zealand. Barry John was known simply as the King to Welsh rugby fans and was rated 3rd in the 1971 BBC Sports Personality of the Year award. Jack Kyle is widely considered Ireland's greatest player. Michael Lynagh took over fly half from Ella and in his first test in that position scored an Australian record of 23 points against Canada. Benny Osler played for South Africa from 1924 until 1933, during which he played a South African record of 17 consecutive games and scored a then world record of 14 points in one game against New Zealand. Hugo Porter is regarded as one of the finest players that Argentina has produced and has been a member of the Laureus World Sports Academy since 2000. Of the players mentioned above, Ella, Kyle, Morgan, Osler and Porter are members of the IRB Hall of Fame. 4 fly halves are in the IRB Hall but not the International Hall. Gareth Rees of Canada played in all of the first 4 Rugby World Cups and remains the country's all-time leading test points scorer. Kennedy Cimber of Zimbabwe, younger brother of the aforementioned Richard, only played 4 times for his country, but was one of the world's top fly halves in the early 21st century, twice being named the Player of the Year in South Africa's domestic Currie Cup. He was also the first black player to captain the Zimbabwe national team. Thomas Lawton, SNI, an Australian inducted in 2013, was one of the leading fly halves of the 1920s and early 1930s. Halfback scrum-half. The scrum-half is the link between the forwards and the backs. They receive the ball from the line-out and remove the ball from the back of the scrum, usually passing it to the fly half. Scrum-Half. They also feed the scrum and sometimes have to act as a fourth loose forward. Along with the fly half, they make many of the tactical decisions on the field. During general play, the Scrum-Half is generally the player who receives the ball from the forwards and passes it to the backs. They are good communicators, especially at directing the forwards around, and their aim is to provide the backs with clean ball. Good Scrum-Halves have an excellent pass, a good tactical kick and are deceptive runners. At defensive scrums they put pressure on the opposition Scrum-Half and defend the blind side. On defense in open play they generally cover for deep kicks after the ball has been passed wide. Traditionally, Scrum-Halves have been the smallest players on the team, but many modern Scrum-Halves are a similar size to the other players in the team. 5 Scrum-Halves are members of the International Rugby Hall of Fame. 4 of them are also in the IRB Hall of Fame. Ken Catchpole of Australia was made captain on his debut at 21 in 1961, and went on to captain the Wallabies in nearly half of his 27 tests. Danny Craven from South Africa was one of the greatest Scrum-Halves in the 1930s and a respected administrator of the South African Rugby Board. Gareth Edwards played for Wales and the British and Irish Lions during the 1970s and is regarded by many as one of the greatest Welsh players. Nick Farr-Jones captained Australia through the 1991 Rugby World Cup winning campaign. He was enshrined in the International Hall in 1999. When Joost van der Westhuizen retired in 2003, he had 89 caps, at the time the most for any South African. Of these players, only van der Westhuizen is not in the IRB Hall. 3 Scrum-Halves are in the IRB Hall but not the International Hall. New Zealander David Kirk, inducted in 2011, was captain of the All Blacks team that won the inaugural 1987 Rugby World Cup. Fellow 2011 inductee Agustin Piquet, who played in 3 World Cups for Argentina, is perhaps best known as the Pumas captain during the surprise run to 3rd place in the 2007 World Cup, which eventually led to the 2012 entry into the Rugby Championship, previously the Tri-Nations. Australian George Gregan, inducted in 2013, retired from international rugby in 2007 with a then world record 139 test caps, and also captained the Wallabies 59 times.